thinking of themselves as Americans. Honestly, this is a mental trap. It's a trick, actually, to make you feel invested in a system that does not invest in you. If you're a part of a so-called minority community, especially, then you only think of yourselves that way because you're an American, or you think of yourself as an American. So you're a minority in American society, but it's a lie if you look at the bigger picture. Obviously, you're not minorities. You're members of the global majority who happen to live in the United States. You're a diaspora community from the global majority. The majority in that country is a global minority. But as long as you think of yourselves as American, well, you will think of yourselves as a minority because you've believed in this society, in this system. You have invested in it, and you believe yourself to be a part of the very society that tells you you don't belong in that society. You see, it would be like inmates in a prison thinking that they're actually part of the staff of the prison administration. Like you aren't incarcerated and abused in that jail, you just work there. Except that the other people who call themselves prison staff get to go home after their shifts while you just get to stay there. You have to stay there in your cell. But you pretend, you imagine that there's some equality between you and the prison guard, between you and the prison staff. That's what it's like if you're a so-called minority in America. You're a prisoner who thinks that he's a guard. But the guards will never hesitate to remind you which one of you has the baton, which one of you has the club, which one of you has the rights, and which one of you has freedom. But even then, you seem to think that the prison works just like seniority at a company or something, as if as a prisoner, the longer you serve, eventually you'll get to be the warden. That's how delusional you are. Doesn't work like that. No, you're not an American and you're not a minority. You're a member of the global majority who just happens to be in the United States. And I'm telling you, this applies whether your so-called minority status is based on race or color or ethnicity, or if it's based on religion, or even if it's based on your economic status, because most of the people on earth are not white, they're not Christian, and they're not rich. So you need to think of yourselves as part of the rest of the people in the world who look like you, who believe like you, and who struggle financially like you. Those are your compatriots, your comrades, your brothers and sisters. That's your nation. If you think of yourselves in any other kind of way, then this is just a tactic for reducing you and cutting you off from the power that comes from numbers. Do you know how foolish it sounds to anyone else, anyone who looks at the totality of the world when you say something like Asian minorities, black and brown minorities, right? It's absurd. Over 85% of the population on the planet is either Asian or African or Latin American. You think that you're a blade of grass in the desert, but the desert is just a little tiny sandbox in the middle of a field of grass. So don't think of yourselves as minorities in America. Think of yourselves as representing the global majority that encircles that country. So if you can readjust your thinking along these lines, then you might also better understand that as a part of the international majority, you're supposed to redress your grievances to international bodies for justice. And you'll look at the crimes and the violations that are committed against you in that country as breaches of international law, which they are. The same way that there are crimes and violations of international law when that country does the same things overseas, when America does things overseas, because your rights are profoundly violated in that country. And the worst part about it is that the indoctrination system has normalized it for you and has made you think that your only recourse when your rights are violated is to go to the ones who are committing the violations. You know, they cut you off from the international community, from the global majority, and made you think that when, for example, when the police murder innocent members of your community, you're supposed to turn to the police for justice. You're supposed to go to the very security forces that are targeting your community for extrajudicial killings and ask them for justice. No, you're supposed to go to the United Nations. You're supposed to go to the International Criminal Court, to the International Court of Justice. I mean, tell me why the so-called police officers and the chiefs of police and the police commissioners and so on, all of those police officials who are involved in any extrajudicial killing in the United States, why were they put on trial in Minnesota, in Pennsylvania, Missouri, Texas, or Kansas, or what have you? Why not at The Hague? I mean, you say it's systemic, don't you? You know it's systemic targeting of so-called minority communities. You can't look at the mass incarceration numbers and not know that this is systemic targeting, mass incarceration of members of the global majority in the United States, who are then forced to work as slave labor for private enterprise in prison, often for the rest of their lives. This is systemic population reduction of so-called minority communities through extrajudicial killing and detention.